Roll Tide, everybody. Welcome to Cover Crimson. We're going to talk about that Alabama wide receiver room that could be the key to getting back to the college football playoff. That and more, your comments. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Cover Crimson. Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Let's go. All right, Roll Tide, everybody, and thanks for hanging out with us. Obviously, you can say it's Friday. I'm at the bar, but no, I'm just kidding, Clint. That's a digital background.
How's your Friday going, brother?
It's pretty good. I gotta do this. I got a speaking thing coming up, so pretty busy. But hey, did you think I was going to reach back there and grab you a shot of something and hand it to you?
Yeah, it's something. Just don't make it Fireball.
Yeah, no. Screwball. Go Screwball. Peanut butter whiskey. You can't go wrong there. So look, man, Friday live show. You guys know covercrimson.com. Been on there. Was messing around. You guys have put like a link to some of the best like videos out there. And I'm watching Mel Kiper break down Jalen Milroe and some of the other prospects. I love that guy, man. I really do. And I agree with everything he said about Milroe. Like, hey, he's like, hey, well, we don't really know what it's going to be like in the draft for him. But talking about the wide receivers he had to throw to this year, I feel pretty confident about the guys coming back.
Yeah, I feel really good about it. And granted, what kind of prompted this topic was a couple of times, well, actually a few times now. It's actually been three. On three separate occasions throughout this offseason, I have noticed people comparing ever since Alabama got the Miami transfer Isaiah Horton, and now they seemingly have three really good starters. A lot of people have been saying or making comments, hey, is this, the Ryde Outs 2.0 or some sort of variation of that? And so I started thinking about it, started comparing the numbers because we all have a surface level idea when you have four future first round draft picks in the same wide receiver room. So not only are your three starters or I guess three starters, when they're all day one picks, and not just day one picks, but top 15 draft picks. And then you can go one extra with a guy like Jalen Waddle in 2018, 2019. It's like everybody's surface level response is no, absolutely not. And granted, I'm still kind of on that train, but looking at the numbers and stuff, looking at the potential for these guys, I started thinking, man, this is probably the best wide receiver room we have seen at Alabama since the Ryde Outs. Not saying they're as good as the Ryde Outs, but, it's a really good wide receiver room.
Hey, if that's the case, then that's a great sign for Alabama because, I felt like after those guys left and then Jamison Williams, he goes to the NFL, and then all of a sudden it felt like there was a huge drop-off at wide receiver. And then, obviously Ryan Williams could play with any of those guys. And he was supposed to be a senior in high school, so we've talked about that a million times. But, you love Germie Bernard and then Horton coming in and then some of the other guys too. You brought up Jalen Hale's name, and you forget about him because he got hurt. But, man, this guy, if he comes back healthy, we thought he was going to be maybe wide receiver 1 this past year before he got hurt. Some people did.
Yeah, and the first season under Kalen DeBoer with Washington's wide receiver room, because when you need to start comparing wide receiver rooms, I think 2025 Alabama is more so similar to 2023 and 2022 Washington wide receiver rooms, which is really good. I mean, you had a bona fide top 10 pick in Rome Odunze. You had Jalen McMillan, who was a third-round pick, just inside the top 100 draft picks. Jalen Polk was taken just outside of the first round, I think number 37 overall. So the beginning of the second round. So you've got two day one draft picks, one borderline first-round pick in Jalen Polk, and then you've got a top 10 type of talent in Rome Odunze. To me, that feels a lot more similar to what we're looking at here. Because when you look at Germie Bernard, I think he's got day two potential all day. When you actually look at Jalen McMillan and you look at Jalen Polk and them being like this 6'1", 197 pound, 205 pound receivers like they were at Washington. Then you look at Germie Bernard, kind of what he does well. I mean, there are some differences, but it's like the Rome Odunze type of receiver that I feel like Alabama was targeting, and Isaiah Horton. Not saying he's going to be that caliber of athlete, but something, he can provide some of those elements. I think those comparisons are there. And then when you look at Germie Bernard and kind of how he compares to, Jalen McMillan and Jalen Polk, it's like, okay, there's some similarities there. You've got your bona fide alpha number one receiver, not in Isaiah Horton. He provides like the actual physical elements of Rome Odunze, but that top 10 type of future draft pick that they had in Rome Odunze, I think Alabama gets that in Ryan Williams. And while they're not even close to being the same player, I think they both do everything well enough where it's like you're getting that alpha number one that you really don't have limitations to. And, when you look at Isaiah Horton, I think he's got day two potential in the future. You look at Ryan Williams having top 10 potential. It's like, it might not quite be Ryde Outs, but it's pretty damn close.
What about Jalen Mbakwe? I mean, we forget that he's moving the wide receiver. Is he playing both sides of the ball now? Or is he going the wide receiver full time? And what do you think the impact he can have on the wide receiver room is?
From my understanding, he's going full time wide receiver, but that's not a guarantee at this point. It is possible that he could still end up playing some corner. But when you look at the cornerback room, you've got two surefire starters in Xavier Brown and Damani Jackson back. You've added a cornerback 3 candidate, a strong cornerback 3 candidate in Cam Calhoun. If you start running deeper than that, or you need more depth on the perimeter because of injuries or whatever, you can always move to Deshaun Jones, who I think is going to play Husky and probably start at Husky back outside. And then maybe you could start Red Morgan. So that would put you at 4 deep on the perimeter. Then you're talking about Dijon Lee. He feels like a guy who I don't think is that far off as far as being able to contribute. Now, I don't think Alabama will have to rely on him. Like Xavier Brown, he was pretty close to being ready to contribute pretty much from the jump, but Alabama needed him so bad that it really didn't matter if he was ready or not. He was going to be thrown out there to an extent. I don't think Alabama's going to be in that position with Dijon Lee, but he can provide some depth. So it's like, does Jalen Mbakwe, does he want to play corner? Does he have to play corner? Does he want to play both ways? I think right now, from my understanding, he probably wants to play exclusively offense, but that, we'll know more about that come the spring.
Yeah, I'd love to see him play both ways. I mean, Travis Hunter won the Heisman doing that. But of the other wide receivers that don't get a lot of mention, right? Not yet anyway. The Rico Scotts, the Cole Adams, the Bubba Hampton type guys. And then I want to get into the newest freshman that we haven't seen yet. But of those three, who do you feel like any of those guys will have an impact? We saw Cole Adams catch some balls before he got hurt. Did some kick returns, but of that group, what do you expect?
Well, I don't think Alabama's 2025 wide receiver room has 4 first-round that they can kind of run that deep with them. So that's what makes it different. But I do think there's more depth in Alabama's wide receiver room now than I feel like that there was in Washington's wide receiver rooms in 2022 or 2023. And so that makes it a little bit, more Ryde Outs than that Washington group, because I do like Jalen Hill. I love what he could potentially provide the offense. I love Cole Adams being kind of an underneath reliable option for whoever starts at quarterback. Rico Scott, definitely, the comparisons have been made to John Mechie. John Mechie showed some flashes as a freshman. Really didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. He started getting more opportunities in year 2, and he took full advantage of those. Rico Scott, will he have as many opportunities as John Mechie did in year 2? Probably not, but I do think what you saw in the bowl game as far as him kind of being elevated to one of the starting receivers, the fact that we heard good things about how he was developing and how he had handled that situation leading up to the bowl game, I think he's in a really good shape to be able to contribute in some shape, form, or fashion. And then with Jalen Mbakwe, where does he fit in? I think there's some nuances to playing the position that he's kind of got to get used to. He played a lot of quarterback in high school. He was an athlete. He played all over the place. But, being able to play wide receiver in the SEC, I think that's going to take a little bit of time, as considering he spent his entire first year pretty much playing corner. but I do think that he could help contribute to that room too. So I think the depth there is in really good shape.
All right, now looking at the two freshmen, Latsier Brooks, the man who was amazing in New Jersey, setting records, making a bunch of plays, and then Derek Meadows from out in Nevada. And I just hear in my mind, every time I think about him coming to Alabama, me interviewing Caleb Cunningham and Cunningham going, man, I enjoyed it, but you should have seen Derek Meadows. He loved Alabama. And this is when Derek Meadows was, I think, a Notre Dame commitment. And then he went to LSU. Well, he came to Bama because he loved it. So I'm excited about having both of these guys. True freshmen, though, can they have an impact at all? What do you see these guys doing?
Yeah, it's another kind of combination that just kind of makes sense from a skill set standpoint. You bring the size element, the ball winning ability downfield, the rawness with Derek Meadows kind of being that, X style of receiver. Then you bring in a guy like Latsier Brooks, who I think is severely underrated. Kind of more of a Z. You're going to move him around a little bit, play him some in the slot. Great as far as the yards after catch. That's something that's very valued in this Alabama offense. I think Germie Bernard provides that. Ron Williams certainly provides it because he essentially provides just about everything. You saw that in Kalen DeBoer's offenses at Washington with guys like, Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan and Roma Denze for kind of being more of a bigger bodied style of receiver. He also was really good as far as yards after contact. Latsier Brooks brings some dynamic playmaking ability. And so you've got a really good, strong combination that kind of fills both of the roles that you kind of envision when you think about a Kalen DeBoer offense. And that's, I really like that aspect or that element they've been able to have.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, too, to kind of see how, Ryan Grubb works with these guys. But love your comments here. Tristan, the mayor of T-Town. Roll Tide, Bama family. Roll Tide right back at you, man. Love this group. Cole is my sleeper. I could see that. But I'm interested in Bubba. Nick Saban did call him a straight dog on signing day. And when you get that type of recognition from Nick Saban, there's a reason why they like you. Remember, he was like a flip, too. Remember, we kind of got him at the last minute. And Saban rarely, kind of said things like that about players. But there's a reason why.
Yeah, he could have ended up on defense, ended up on offense. That makes sense because he can really do. He was listed as an athlete, at least according to some recruiting services. I like that he ended up a receiver. He kind of feels like a slot to me, and he has some playmaking ability. I just wonder when you start thinking about this room, I can go through pretty much every receiver. I could go through pretty much, most running backs. I could go through a lot of the corners. I could go through the safeties, the outside linebackers. I can make an argument for several guys that aren't expected to have a major role, maybe a smaller role, or, they're just, and it's mostly because of the guys ahead of them. And I can make an argument X player deserves way more opportunities or way more playing time or whatever. But you start saying, okay, at whose expense? If you're getting Bubba Hampton involved, and he can certainly, this isn't me saying, hey, this is definitely the way it's going to play out, because some guys they say, I'm going to be so good. Doesn't matter what else you got. You're going to have to figure out how to get me on the field. And, he's got that dog mentality. So I wouldn't count him out, but you start asking yourself, okay, who's going to go to the bench in favor of Bubba Hampton? You talk about those three at the top, a couple of projected day 2 draft picks in the future. You've got a projected top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick in Ron Williams. Mm-hmm. Where does a guy like Bubba Hampton fit in as far as the depth? Because he's not going to be starting. Jalen Hill coming back from injury, but really like the talent. Rico Scott showed a lot of potential. Cole Adams is a guy who, if Alabama's offense would have looked a little different in 2024, I think he would have been one of the starters. But Kendrick Law being kind of the blocker that he was, the fact that you were so perimeter run oriented with your quarterback, that element from Kendrick Law kind of vaulted him into a much bigger role because he was so good at that perimeter blocking. In more of a pass heavy style of offense or passing centric offense, I think Cole Adams would have started last year. And I think that he has a really good chance of being one of the top 4 or 5 this year. And so then it's like Latsier Brooks can't project that he's going to be like an immediate contributor or he's going to be ready. Like we have no idea, but he's capable of pushing for time. Rico Scott, inside out option, really would like to see him get some more opportunities. So while I do like Bubba Hampton, and I do think I wouldn't be like completely floored if he like shocked all of us and earned significant playing time, I don't know if I can project that right now.
Very, very interesting. Guys, love the comments. Brian Fife says, good to hear that discipline has been put on priority. I agree with that too, man. You cannot win football without discipline. I've said that a million times throughout the year, that last year's team lacked discipline, and that's why they lost to Oklahoma and they lost to Michigan, in my opinion, and maybe Vanderbilt too. But also read how intense Grubb is. And input on the O-line. I love that too, man. Have open competition for quarterback. I think that's all fair. Nobody has a job. Remember Nick Saban used to say that? Don't walk in here expecting to have a job. Nobody has a job. You got to earn your job.
Across the board. Yeah. And that's kind of, Ryan Grubb having kind of the background that he does, very good at scheming guys open. You don't want to be overly reliant on that. I think like the best example of a guy who had the ability to create separation and get open on his own was Devontae Smith, but then running in unison with Steve Sarkisian that 2020 season, and the fact that he could also scheme you open effectively and pretty consistently, it created like some absurd wide open Devontae Smiths. And so like you want that combination. And Ryan Grubb, I think he provides that. You got to believe in the development of your wide receiver room because you believe in the wide receivers coach. Last year, it was an acclimation period for everybody. Jamarcus Shepard is trying to get a feel for who he's got in that room. Everybody was new to him except for Germie Bernard. He wanted to get a feel for what they did well, what they don't do well, what's their competitive spirit, how do they, take the coaching, all these different things. It was an acclimation period. So I think that this offseason is the biggest opportunity for growth within that room. And when you start focusing on like Isaiah Horton has all this potential, you start talking about Ryan Williams and just the fact that he was a little bit inconsistent, had some freshman struggles down the stretch, could certainly be a lot more consistent, but you would expect a lot of positive growth on that for him in year two. Germie Bernard, you know what you're getting out of him. He should have been 1,000-yard receiver. There were so many yards left on the field last year, unfortunately not trying to take a shot, but because the quarterback couldn't get in the football consistently enough. And he did a good job at times, and there were some amazing throws. I was looking at some Germie Bernard, tape earlier this week, and I was really impressed with some of the throws that Jalen Milroe made, but he was just too inconsistent. And especially against Michigan in the bowl game, it's like, just in that one game, if he catches everything or he's able to be in a position to catch everything that Jalen Milroe threw him, he might have topped out. I think he was 800 and something yards this year. He could have went for 1,000 or broke 1,000 just off of that game alone, but he wasn't able to for that reason. I think he's a good number 2 receiver, and you know what you're going to get in him, but you expect positive development from everybody else.
Remember when we would talk about Amari Cooper? And they would say, nobody runs more routes than Amari Cooper. Nobody puts the time in like Amari Cooper. Then Calvin Ridley came, and they're like, Calvin Ridley, he runs these routes, man, and he puts in the extra work. And then Devontae Smith, and everybody's like, hey, Devontae Smith he's so detail-oriented with the routes and the blocking and all that stuff. Those guys didn't get to be great because they just showed up and they were great. They put the time in to be great. I think Julio's the greatest wide receiver that Alabama's ever had. He put the time in, but he was also just a freak of nature. You look at Smitty, and I mean, look, the guy just won a Super Bowl. What makes him different than a lot of other receivers? It's the work. It's the work in the film room, and it's the work out on the field, and what you hope is that you see a guy like Ryan Williams, to take that same Amari Cooper mentality where you keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, and all your routes are perfect. You turn it into a science. And if they can get that mentality back, and AK brings up a point here too, he's talking about Hurts getting benched. Hurts got beat out for that job. We all love Hurts, and we were all pulling for him. Tua was better, right? That's just what happens in football, man. It just happens, right? But that's how it used to be at Alabama. What the best story that Jay Coker talks about is I think Jonathan Allen and somebody else got into a fight on the plane. He's sitting next to him because both guys were arguing that they had a better game in like a 45-10 blowout. And they're seriously angry. I can't remember who the other guy is. Maybe Ashawn or something. But the fact that they cared so much about all the things that go into winning, Bama's got to get back to that. And this wide receiver room, to me, Clint, and I kind of will wrap it up and talk about what's going on in Tuscaloosa this weekend after. But it has all the talent that they need. It's just, can they find that same mentality?
Well, and one of the things, the biggest representation of Devontae Smith and his willingness to do whatever it takes, his willingness to get better at every aspect. He wanted to be the absolute best wide receiver that he could be. One of the elements that makes you a great wide receiver or can help make you a great wide receiver is your blocking ability. It is not, it's not the flash. It's not what everybody thinks about. Like when you think about Randy Moss, how often is his blocking brought up as far as his Hall of Fame career? How often is, Jerry Rice, hey, was I don't even know about, I didn't really study football back then like I do now. I couldn't tell you what Randy Moss was as a blocker. I couldn't tell you what Jerry Rice was as a blocker. What I can tell you is that that's still an important element to playing the position. And the work ethic that Devontae Smith put in, especially being his size, it was so critical to his success. Like it not only did it help others or vault others into more successful positions, but it just showed me this guy's got the right stuff mentally to a point where you've got a 6'1", 220-pound A.J. Brown built like a running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. And when you're talking about getting guys out there and getting blocks, they asked Smitty to do that at 170 pounds, way more than they do A.J. Brown. And that's something that I think made Devontae Smith special. And Ron Williams, everything that we've ever heard about this guy is just the work that he's willing to put in, the weight room, the film room, everything else. He is going to try extremely hard. I didn't think there was any sort of lack of effort from his blocking last year. I think he was a smaller guy. It's the SEC. It's a physical league. You saw lapses or times where maybe he wasn't overly effective in that area, but him spending another offseason, or I guess this is his first full offseason in Alabama's strength and conditioning program, I think that's going to help him as far as all the other elements of playing the position. But, I think that you see improved blocking, like Germie Bernard, inconsistent, but, he's an effective blocker. Like what I like about this room and what I loved about the Ryde Outs, because it wasn't just Devontae Smith, you had top 15 talents all over the field, and none of them were like, I'm too good to block. They all had each other's back, and they wanted each other to make plays as much as they wanted to make plays. And I think that Ron Williams has that kind of mentality. Germie Bernard is certainly, it seems like a selfless guy. I don't know Isaiah Horton from a personality standpoint, but I do know that he blocked or was a pretty good blocker from Miami. So it's like it just we talk about like the Ryde Out elements and how they might be similar. This is not as talented of a group. I'll go ahead and tell you that. But I do love not only the talent that they bring from a receiving standpoint, but seemingly from a willingness to kind of get after it to help others make plays as well. And that's something that Jamarcus Shepard's going to demand too. So I like the combination of factors here.
Guys, check out Clint on covercrimson.com. He's ranking every single player on the Bama roster. We're keeping an eye on the transfer portal, coaching changes, obviously the roster, the active roster, all of that on there, plus the message board, because we like to get on there and cut it up. Did I hit it all, Clint?
Yeah, in summary, because that's kind of what sparked this conversation. I think when you talk about, once again, when you talk about this Alabama wide receiver room in 2025, it's going to be probably more 22 Washington, 2023 Washington. But just because I say that doesn't mean that this isn't. It's just that group, that Ryde Out group was so special. I don't know if we'll ever see that again on the college level. You have that many guys that are that talented. But I think that this is as good as Alabama has had in quite a while. it's going to be in a Kalen DeBoer offense. Like, you go back and you look, the number of pass attempts, I got it right in front of me. 2018 Alabama, 29.2 pass attempts per game. So under 30. In 2019, 31.2. So that ranked number 85 and number 72 nationally during the Ryde Out era. Like, they didn't throw the football around a ton. You compare that to Washington, 2022, 44.2 pass attempts per game, which ranked fourth. And then in 2023, it came down a little bit, 38.3, which ranked 12th nationally. So a lot of the success that Washington's offense had as far as the receiving production, a lot of volume really helped as far as getting a lot of guys involved. It's kind of incredible how Alabama had so many guys, because you had the 4 receivers. You had Irv Smith Jr. in 2018. You had Najee Harris setting some running back records, or school records as far as receiving stats in 2019. Like, the fact that they were able to get other guys involved and have 4 receivers all be productive on such limited pass attempts was pretty incredible. But I think in this Kalen DeBoer offense and stuff, you are going to see multiple receivers featured. You're going to see them have a lot of production. You might not have 2,000-yard receivers, but I think you'll at least have one, and you'll have multiple guys sitting up there in the 7, 8, 900-yard range too.
Let's talk about this weekend in Tuscaloosa. First off, you got the Bama basketball game, 3 o'clock tip-off. Number 1 Alabama. I know, Clint, they're number 2 in the AP, but they're number 1 in the coaches poll against number 1 Auburn. It's really number 2 in the coaches poll. No, I'm just kidding. Look, it's number 1 versus number 1, 3 o'clock, but ESPN College Game Day, which the basketball College Game Day isn't fantastic. It's okay. But look, 7:30, it's open to students, and then 8 o'clock, the general public. Still think it's something that anytime you get national exposure for these shows, show up there and support that. And it's a big day. I mean, it's celebrating Nate Oates, a Final Four basketball team from a year ago, and this basketball team that has the biggest game in Coleman Coliseum history.
I mean, the closer the game gets, I didn't think it was possible, because I knew as soon as Alabama and Auburn both handled business earlier this week, I thought, okay, you don't have anybody saying, yeah, they're ranked number 1 or number 2 now, but they just lost, so they're going to be falling. It's like, I thought at that point, you can't get the hype and going to get bigger than it is right now. And it's only continued to build. There's a lot of anticipation for tomorrow. I think it's great for the state of Alabama. I think it's great for basketball. And hopefully it gives everybody the show that we're all expecting. I think Alabama's more than capable of pulling out a win. I know Coleman Coliseum is going to be absolutely rocking. It should be a lot of fun, Mick.
I can't wait. Baseball plays Bradley. SEC baseball's back, which is pretty crazy, right? 4 o'clock today, 1 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday. Hope that Alabama is a little bit better than last year, but it'll be a second season for Rob Vaughn, and this guy had a great track record in Maryland, so he feels like his feet are under him a little bit.
I'll say this, Mick. I'm going to enjoy watching Alabama baseball. It's something that I kind of started to get into a little bit more last year, probably for the first time. I'm the cat that when you swing at a baseball enough in T-ball and you miss it enough, eventually you can strike out. They'll just tell you to go sit down. A good job. And I was one of those kids, never overly gifted when it came to, when it was weird. I was pretty good at basketball as a kid. I was pretty good at football, but baseball takes a special kind of player. I will say I remember sitting in Nick Saban's office. He was talking to William Ming, and he was talking about the importance of multi-sport athletes. And I was a kid that when I got to high school, I'm like, I want to focus strictly on football. I want to make that my life. And as I'm hearing him say this, I'm like, damn it, I screwed up by not playing multiple sports. William had, and he had actually just hit like a game-winning home run in a playoff game. And it's like, just him hearing Nick Saban talk about the importance and what you can learn as far as like hand-eye coordination, mental focus. You get in slumps a lot, in baseball. Like, you need to have a mental fortitude to play that sport. And, it kind of reveals a lot about your character and all the different things that he takes from basketball and baseball. I'm actually really looking forward to watching baseball because I want to see, I want to see some of what he was talking about play out myself. I've watched the Braves in big moments, but I definitely could use getting into baseball a little bit more.
Nick Saban's a huge Yankees fan. Of course, the great voice of the Yankees for many years, Mel Allen, was an Alabama guy. And George Steinbrenner, when he owned the Yankees, brought him to Tuscaloosa for exhibition games because of Bear Bryant. They were friends, which is pretty cool to think about, So, yeah, Nick Saban loves baseball. Softball team is in a tournament, the Shriners Children's Clearwater Invitational. We're keeping an eye on that and all that going on. It's full college athletics outside of football, full swing right now. But that basketball game tomorrow is huge, man. And I hope Alabama plays their best. I really do, because it even though if you win or you lose, like, it doesn't matter that much. It still would be great to send their butts packing on the bus.
It matters
with a dub.
I got to be honest with you. Bama fans have been running their mouths. Auburn fans have been running their mouths, and this is what the reason the passion is so great for football is everybody is proud of what their respective football teams represent for them, and it makes them really emotionally invested. You see that emotional investment in basketball nowadays in the state of Alabama. It means something to a lot of people. And whoever loses tomorrow is going to have to deal with a lot of trash talk, at least until that next game coming up in March. So I certainly hope Alabama's able to get it done, because if they can, it's going to be a fun couple weeks.
Yeah, really. Elephant in the room. It's coming out today, I think about 4:00. I asked Jay Coker about the NFL Combine, and he told me that he didn't get invited. So just get ready for that. Think about what a terrible host I am. I asked him that, and then we talked about AJ McCarron's comments about the Ed Bannon lawsuit, where it goes back 10 years, and McCarron was telling a podcast that his jersey was like top 3 in the country sales. He didn't get any money of it, which he should have, right? And I asked Coker about that. Coker was 11 days into the 2016, season, where he could have maybe gotten paid. So
we got to get all of us. We got to get all of us back on a show together because now that I know this about the Combine, or I remember this about the Combine, I got to bring up how important it is for players to get invited to the Combine. And if you don't, you can't be considered a school grade if you don't get invited to the Combine, because somehow I always stick my foot in my mouth when it comes to him. So
yeah. So you should hear what he says to me off the air. But anyway, to watch that show coming up tonight. And again, like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out with us on Cover Crimson, guys. We're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use that promo code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit, and go on there. And then maybe you feel comfortable about that Bama game tomorrow. Hey, there you go. mybookie.ag, promo code NEXTROUND. All right, for Clint Lamb, I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys, and roll. All right, not too bad.